swim across the Potomac. It's really big, and he has a broken leg. So he promises Booth and Harold, I'll get you a boat, but I'm not really sure when it's going to be. So they end up having to stay in the woods and end up killing their horses and eating them because, of course, you know, they don't want to make any noise. And they're actually fortunate that they did it because only 100 feet away, this is what Booth said, is that Union cavalry were walking right past them. So imagine sitting in some damp, cold swamp, basically, for 5 days. That's basically what it was. And so eventually when they got a boat, they crossed, and they ended up meeting with some people. I mean, this farm is really insignificant. They just stop there and get something to eat and stay the night. And then they go to Garrett's farm. This is a picture taken in the late 1800s, so it might be a little blurry. But they walk up to the door, and again, they have the open door policy. Basically, can I stay the night? And of course, they would say, yeah, sure, why not? And so the next morning, the Garretts wake up, and Booth is playing with their kids. I mean, it doesn't seem like that bad. You know, what a great guest. He likes to entertain our family. And that night, actually, they ended up having supper, and then the father opens up the paper and says, wow, can you believe someone killed Lincoln? Who would do that? And surprisingly, the guy who did it was sitting right next to him, and they had no idea. So, you know, they're talking about this, and Booth is saying, wow, geez, wow, I wonder who did this. You know, he's, you know, smiling inside thinking, gosh, if only they knew. So Booth actually sends Harold to go to Bryantown, which is just a town down the road, just to get a buggy, you know, because obviously they don't have any horses, they have no way of traveling anymore. And when Harold actually gets to Bryantown, he sees a bunch of Union soldiers and gets really scared and comes back and tells Booth, you know, said, we got to get out of here. You know, they're on our tail. And Booth says, don't worry about it. You know, we'll just stay in the barn for the night. You know, no one's going to find us. We'll leave in the morning. And at this point, the Garretts are getting really suspicious. They think, you know, why would you want to sleep in the barn? You know, why are you pulling out your pistol when you see someone coming? You know, it's really weird. So they go in the barn and they wait. They're supposed to get up really early in the morning and head off. Well, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the Union cavalry shows up to Garrett's farm and says, have you seen these two guys? He goes, well, yeah, they're in the barn. And he's thinking to himself, you know, why would you ask about these two guys? And eventually he tells them, yeah, well, you know, Lincoln's killer. He's like, you know, how dumb must I be? They were sitting in my house the entire time. And so he sends them down to the barn, and basically the Union cavalry leader, Edward Doherty, basically knocks on the front door and says, is anyone in there? And he waits a little bit, and there's no response. He's like, oh, great, you know, he just led me off to some random goose chase, and, you know, Booth and Hill would probably off on the run. Well, Booth actually answers and said, you know, who is this? What do you want? Who do you want? And they said, whoa, you're on a lucky game show today. You have two choices. You can either come out now, or we can burn this thing down with you inside. And of course, Harold is very, very nervous. He's like, I don't want to die like this. So he runs out, surrenders himself to the Union Army, while Booth is still in there. And they light the barn on fire, basically, as they say, you know, if you're not going to come out, I guess we're just going to basically force you out. And so, at this time, Boston Corbett, who's another Union official, goes to the back of the barn and peers through a little tiny slit in the wood and shoots Booth in the neck and basically paralyzes him from the neck down. Now, I'm not really good with guns or anything, but I can imagine having to shoot someone in the morning when it's cold and it's smoke and fire everywhere, and getting that good of a shot. You know, he basically says that, you know, I wasn't supposed to take the shot, but I did anyways because I felt like I should. This guy was kind of nuts, though. He had the little screws loose. Before this incident, he had actually castrated himself, which basically means he chopped off his, yeah. So kind of weird, but he was actually in an insane asylum in the late 1880s. And in fact, in 1888, he escaped from the asylum and he was never saw again. So, many are, you know, very curious. It's like, you know, I can't believe this guy actually killed Booth. You think he'd be someone more prominent. Well, after all this is done, everyone is rounded up. Basically, the four main conspirators, they're taken to trial. and they're basically found guilty, of course. Unfortunately for these guys, the trial was wrong doing. Back then, Lincoln had actually instituted a military tribunal. So basically, if you did something wrong, you'd go in front of the military. Of course, the military is not going to side with you, so you're probably going to be found guilty. But today, if you get in trouble with the law, you would go in front of your peers, and they would determine whether you were guilty or not. So good thing to always be nice to people, because you never know when they could end up finding you guilty or not. So at this time, they were found guilty and sentenced to hang. And on July 7th, they were sentenced to hang. And this whole story goes to this point, and basically Johnson has the ability to free one of them, or all of them, basically. Johnson actually pardons Dr. Mudd and Samuel Arnold eventually. So maybe he would have pardoned any one of these, maybe, maybe not. But they're all sentenced to hang, and Lewis Powell and George Astaroth, they do not die right away. Typically when you're hung, you're supposed to die right away. Well, unfortunately, the people that did their nooses didn't actually tighten it all the way, and they ended up actually strangling for about 10 minutes. So very, very slow and painful death. Also with this, the woman, she was the first woman ever executed by the United States government. This is very, very groundbreaking. People were very, very skeptical of hanging a woman. I don't really think she intended to do anything harm, but I think she just kind of happened. I think she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So after all this is when all the conspiracies come out, and there's a couple that I really like. There's one of them obviously trying to bomb the White House. There's one of the Pope trying to send Booth letters, because all the conspirators were actually Catholic, and it was actually a very, very Catholic time period around that time. So, I guess apparently they thought the Pope was sending them letters. And there's another one that's kind of creepy, but somewhat funny. There's a guy in Tennessee who found out that a guy in Oklahoma actually died. And apparently, a woman who met the guy in Oklahoma said that he said that he was John Wilkes Booth. So, of course, he takes the initiative, and back then, no one really could claim the body because he didn't have any relatives. So the guy from Tennessee ended up taking his body, mummifying it, and taking it around the country claiming that it was Booth. So until the government finally showed up and said, this is not John Wilkes Booth, this is some guy from Oklahoma. So it'd be kind of weird if someone were just like mummify me and take me around and say that I'm, Bill Clinton or something. So, that'd be kind of weird. And so he tries to publish it, and he gets kind of discredited. And he ends up just basically spending the rest of his life in basically isolation. No one wants to talk to him. He took a guy's body and took it around the country. It's kind of weird. So, and that's basically the story of it all. I've told you most of. I've tried to condense it. I know you guys are loving this because it's Friday. So, any questions?
What questions, Caden?
What kind of conditioner do you use?
What kind of conditioner do I use?
Oh,
It's a 2-in-1. Cheaper.
What's that about? Well, what kind of thoughts came through your head? I know there's a lot of stuff. Hey, will you guys maybe help us out a little bit? I'm thinking I should probably put some vocabulary here for the other classes. Help me out. What words didn't you understand? Which one?
The person that was supposed to be with Lincoln at the theater.
Grant.
Right. Okay, good. That's a thought. All right, I was thinking of the words Union and Confederate. Since we haven't quite started that, do you think that those two words were kind of confusing?
Wait, we're going to start learning about this stuff?
Yeah, after we take the test on Tuesday. All right?
It's a good story.
It's a good story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Union is the North. You know that the Civil War is the North versus the South, right? And you guys probably think that the war was about slavery, right, at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll talk about that. The North, the Confederate is called the South. Okay. So maybe I'm sparking something. What kind of comes to mind? That's excellent. That's awesome.
Yeah, so the red ones are the Union, and the blue and kind of basically everyone else is the southern states.
What are the gray and the?
Gray are states, well this is kind of the upper level kind of map.
Yeah.
But basically, these all down are Confederate states.
Yeah.
These are the ones that fell after Fort Sumter, which you guys will learn about later. But Fort Sumter was basically the start of the Civil War, basically. So.
Cool. All right, so Grant is the main general for the North, okay? Ulysses S. Grant, U.S. Grant. And he's actually going to become president. It's kind of interesting that Matt talked about Andrew Johnson because he's going to be the first president ever to be impeached. Do you remember what impeached means?
No.
What does that mean? Taken to court. Good job, Diane. I love it that she didn't say kicked out of office. Because impeached means you're accused of a crime. And so that happens to Andrew Johnson. So maybe he would have rather ended up dead. Oh, haha.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, general for the North.
Was the Southern's military, was it just called the Confederacy?
It was like the United Confederate States of America,
Okay.
but they basically shortened it to the Confederacy.
Yeah. Because remember we talked about the Articles of Confederation. And remember think about that spider I tell you. What was the deal with the Articles of Confederation? What was more powerful, the state or the central government?
States.
The state.
Central.
Yes. And that's what they wanted to go back to. They wanted the states to have more power than the central government. And that's why they called themselves a confederacy, right? Does that make sense? Okay. General for the North. And I was going to say cavalry. Do you guys know what a cavalry is?
Yeah.
That's the soldiers on horseback. Today they'd be more on a tank or another artillery thing. So a cavalry are soldiers on horseback. I think that's very interesting that they ate their own horse. I mean,
Interesting.
I think that.
You can eat just one horse, was it? Yeah, did you ever just a horse meat in London?
What? Yeah, I heard about that. They used to
One I shouldn't be alive.
Oh yes. How about conspiracy? Do you know what conspiracy means?
Like a belief.
Theory.
It's a theory for a massive kind of crime. Yeah, I mean a conspiracy. It means that it's a big, broad kind of crime where it's not just one person. Like if John Wilkes Booth had just got up that morning and thought, I'm going to go kill the president. That's one thing. But the fact there's so many people who are involved in this, and then after that, they even thought more people were involved in it. I think that conspiracy means a large scale of deception or planning. So a large scale of, maybe we should look it up.
And basically, I think I forgot to mention, Booth actually does die. I think I actually forgot to say that. But he dies in the front porch of Garrett's farm that morning. So yeah, he doesn't die right away, but
But you said you shot him.
Yeah.
yeah, Corbett shot him in the neck and he was paralyzed, but he didn't die until about like 2 hours later.
That's 9 of the 8 numbers.
And you know what? I'm not sure I quite got that your name is Mud thing. Do you get that?
No.
Like today people say, your name is Mud. Have you ever heard that?
No.
It was much more common, I think, when we were younger. And Matt is saying that when Booth, who has that broken left ankle, hobbles over to Dr. Mudd unknowingly fixes his ankle and sends him on his way. And so that's why their family went with a lot of shame and, guilt after that, as if he, purposely helped the killer of our beloved President Lincoln.
Did he go on trial?
he did go to trial, but yeah, he was pardoned, I think, in 1869 by Johnson. Johnson pardoned a couple people, and then the other conspirator, Laughlin, he ended up dying of yellow fever in a prison in Florida.
I know,
So,
that's pretty cool. Ask him that.
Did Dr. Mudd know that Booth killed the president?
you know, he knew that they were conspiring about it, but I don't think he actually knew what they did. I think he kind of just thought, oh, maybe they're going to do it, I'm not really sure. But I don't think he exactly knew for sure that they did it.
So he didn't know they did it, but he was doing it.
They had talked to Mudd before getting there and said, you know, we need to come here eventually. So in case we come here, just basically expect us.
And there was a long story about how his family had to pay that price years and really generations later because he was involved with helping John Wilkes Booth escape, right? So, you know what? National Geographic has a good new documentary that's coming out. And Matt is going to New York. Can you tell him a little bit about that?
I am going to a conference in about 2 weeks where I'm going to be proposing my information to a bunch of people. And I will say this the first time, I will be youngest by at least 20 years. So yeah, it's been really, really awkward. But basically, I'm going to meet the producer of that and meet some of the, I think one of the actors in it. It came out last week, but they show it periodically throughout.
What came out last week?
It's called Killing Lincoln. It's a National Geographic documentary on it. It's somewhat lengthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours, but it goes way into more depth than I do.
And I guess it's really great.
You should watch it.
I was thinking about part of it, you know, when I keep my hands on it a little bit. But, I mean, if you can imagine with all of the movie Lincoln, how many of you have seen Lincoln yet?
Which one?
Lincoln what?
The movie?
Oh,
Daniel
Lincoln.
Day-Lewis had just won the
The
Olympics.
killing vampire one?
Academic.
Vampire one?
What'd you say, Vermont?
Not the vampire one.
No, no, not that one.
Oh, I got one more.
Yeah.
What's with the camera?
The what?
Camera.
Oh, well, because I like exploiting all your guys' faces and making you really nervous.
Really embarrassed and putting it on YouTube and everything.
You even noticed that?
Is it even
Usually what I
on?
do is I put these on YouTube, so my family, especially like in the
No, it's
Czech
off.
Republic.
It's on. I just